not the way it was taught. I think sex ed should be a comprehensive course that describes and goes into detail methods of safe sex and doesn't scare people into not wanting to have sex, but does teach them the consequences of what could happen.
They should mention the gay and lesbian thing, with it being less of an exception.
Honest discussion about all kinds of people. I guess like, you know, like talking about consent would be good. Real conversations about contraception and birth control and or just having safe sex in general, because it's not just about not getting pregnant. And just kind of being realistic about sex with young people.
They should be like, hey, this is what sex is. It's not what you expect it to be. And it's okay to have sex. Like, you are not disgusting because you have sex. You are not less because you have sex. They should kind of like include everyone and not just be like straight people.
Being open and explaining things from many different points of view, it's just the best way to get an understanding of something. So that means, you know, including everyone and including both sides of, you know, the look of what people think of sex.
I would talk about like gender, hygiene, mainly just protection. And then I would talk about like homosexual couples.
I think specifically talking about not, you know, sexual orientations other than straight is a big one, but also people who, you know, like we were talking about before, like a variety of gender identities would be really helpful. And I think that would just be helpful in general for having like any curriculum about that in public school. Talking about gender identity, talking about orientation, talking about a wider variety of how to be, of like contraceptives and how to be safe, and talking about consent would be huge.
That's kind of a tough call because everyone's got different like morals and opinions on things. You can't learn just from a textbook. A conversation about like consent or like emotions or like communication, things like that are like kind of like really complicated, like, and you can't just like, definitely aren't going to be comfortable topics for people.
They shouldn't elaborate on it.
I think that people's opinions should remain outside of the classroom. For example, when you take a history class, the history professor doesn't talk about what he thought was a good idea or was a bad idea, just what happened and what were the facts. And sex ed should be the same way.
I think the opinion-based curriculum is a little bit more abusive is the only word that can come to me right now. With those sex ed classes, it was kind of like, even though they didn't really talk about it, they made it seem like, oh, you're gross. Fact-based sex ed classes would probably be a lot better because then it's not super opinionated.
Sex education should be a scientific class, and science is not opinion-based, it is fact-based.
Yeah, they should do it from a scientific standpoint, but like still positive. Like they shouldn't shame people for having sex, otherwise they're just gonna do it in secret and then get diseases, which is bad.
I think the fact-based and honesty, you know, like honesty and openness with young people is something that seems really simple and should be simple, but adults don't do it very often when it comes to sex ed. And, you know, especially dialogue, answering students' questions is big. We never had, that's another thing that would have been helpful, is we never had like, hey, these are my office hours, you can come talk to me. Not that I wonder how many people would actually have done that, but it would be helpful to have also people who could offer to talk to you not in a class setting, because who the hell wants to bring up their sex life in class, you know?
Not once.
Never at all. There was no discussion of consent ever, or of like what constitutes rape, or, you know, how to deal with that if that occurs, so like maybe resources even.
From what I can remember, there was a little bit of mention of that, but it wasn't as much as I would have liked. I know that there are not very complicated rules for that. It's either a yes or a no, and that wasn't covered a lot. It was mentioned maybe, but not very well.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Should definitely be taught in a sex ed, like, sweet Jesus.
So anything that concerns sexual behavior should be in a sexual health class.
In like a high school health class, they should definitely talk about it.
They should be like, hey, so this is what's considered rape. Consent is a really big part of sex. I think if they're going to talk about rape, then they should definitely talk about the PTSD that people feel with rape, because there have been women who have been raped by men and they can't even be around a man.
Discussing sexual assault candidly and then resources surrounding that would be huge.
Maybe talk to them like one-on-one.
I think that the best thing is to educate kids that are like strong like leaders like in the social circles. A kid explaining to another kid about something is always going to be easier for that kid to understand.
I think that those people can make a choice for themselves, but the point of sexual education is to make people have an informed choice, and so they know all the options and the consequences of those when they do make those choices.
Maybe place more importance on the job of the teacher. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are going to school to be sex ed teachers, and I think that it's probably a really important thing that you should get the right skills because you are dealing with immature and young people dealing with immature subjects.
I would focus less on the consequences and more so on the prevention of said consequences.
One thing that I think is a really basic thing that sort of blows my mind is that I would have people teach it that actually know what the hell they're talking about. We have science teachers who specifically went to school to become science teachers. We have math teachers who specifically studied math. And then you have health being taught by your PE teacher who maybe has no specific training and it is given a curriculum and told to teach it. It would follow that there would be a more honest curriculum and a more inclusive curriculum for, that shows that, with a different variety of genders represented, gender identities, sexual orientation, consent, and just having a more well-rounded and also having it be a dialogue.
I would talk about just more sexuality stuff because when they talk about romantic and like attraction, they always do it with the straight couple, and they don't really talk about anything besides like you're attracted to this dude, don't have sex with him until you're sure, and like that's it.
I would probably go more into detail. Sex education is a very big topic and it is controversial. We should focus on it a lot because of teen pregnancies and unprotected sex. And in our generation, it's happening a lot. And I think students need to be more informed on it and really see what can happen if you don't protect yourself.